Hey. And you know what time it is, right? You got this like weird, like Brady Bunch looking square thing. And anyway, probably most of you don't even know what the Brady Bunch was about. So I'm going to stop embarrassing myself. Anyway, welcome to this week's exciting episode of The Mainstream, where we discuss, mainstream adoption of blockchain tech and what it means to the mainstream and why should the mainstream care. And once again, every time I say mainstream, you take a shot. That's the game. That's how we work it. Now, today, and again, I say this every week, and I say every week that I say this every week, but today we have some really exciting guests with us. Theo, he's not a guest. He lives here, and he's not. But it's good to have you with us again, Theo. It's I missed last week. I was out on assignment, doing stuff, so I wasn't here. So good to see you. And that's it's a nice cabin you got behind you. Very very nice fireplace.
Thank you so much. I most of the times share this fireplace and the piano with others that do this kind of calls and use the same background as me.
But it's Piana. It's Piana. It's pronounced Piana. Piana.
Yes, sir. Yeah. But it's a big pleasure to be here again. I've missed a few episodes of the mainstream the past few weeks. I'm very happy that I'm back, though. I'm taking my position back from Brian, and I'm super excited to have these guests with us today, Ehsan and Armenia. I think we're going to have some really, really good conversations. We did have a space with them last week, and we discovered quite a few amazing things from Ehsan and FunctionLand, and the amazing things that they do. We also were quite fortunate to be able to talk to Kate as well, the co-founder of FunctionLand. So I'm really looking forward for this conversation. And we're also very blessed to have Joe Armenia with us from being in the woods, in the nature right now.
Yeah.
I love your background, my man.
No, I'm just sitting on the deck. A little loud in the house. So I'm not here with my dog, technically. See if you can.
Joe,
look,
Joe,
beautiful.
Joey's a mountain man. That whole meme. It was oh my god, my brain is not working right now. But the meme where it's just like it's like a close up shot of a guy with a beard going like, that one.
Yeah.
You know that Jim. That's actually Joe. That guy is Joe. That was based on Joe. So yeah. Joe is a nature man. He owns mountains, I guess, and he fights bears for lunch, and then eats them for lunch. At least that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
so sorry if I messed things up for you there. So we got Joe with us, we got Ehsan with us, and so we were just talking about this right now. I mean, we are in the Web3 space, and everybody thinks they're in the Matrix, and everybody's got like their own like Matrix name, and I've always been doxxed, right? But we were talking about this here. Your last name is not FunctionLand, right? Because I said it sounds quite Nordic, and I just don't know if that is the case. So why don't you tell us a little bit about FunctionLand before I go to Joe? Because me and Joe, we got this like years of doing stuff on podcasts, and we did our Ergo AMAs every week, and Joe was always sitting there with like a 6-gallon cup of coffee because it was like 5 a.m. for him because I'm in Japan and he's in the mountains of Colorado. Robert Redford, that was the guy with the beard, Robert Redford. Anyway, So, Mr. FunctionLand, which is not your real last name.
Yeah, it's not. So, hey, Dan, it's a pleasure being here. No, FunctionLand has been my last name for the past 3 years, but not before that.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
And unlike Joe, I'm actually an indoor man. But it's interesting. So I've studied at Colorado, University of Colorado in Boulder. Very, very good nature there. So yeah, I used to be an outdoor man there, but not since my last name became FunctionLand. Uh, so like FunctionLand is actually about creating a mainstream product. Peter Schiff once said, "What is the sound of Bitcoin? We can't hear it, we can't feel it, so it doesn't have value." And we in Web3 builders are building the sounds and shapes for it. And FunctionLand is focusing on data storage because we humans, we create tons of data every day. And unless this data is organized, is processed, and turned into information, it's useless. Right now, we are delegating this task of storing data to a few central cloud providers, and they also organize it, process it for us. But we at FunctionLand are creating a decentralized cloud infrastructure where users provide the same services we get from these cloud infrastructure to each other. So basically, I share my storage with you, you back up my data, I back up your data, and we also share the compute power. And now we get the power to run the apps, such as, like popular apps, like Photos apps, file storage apps in a truly decentralized way. So, like one thing you may ask is why decentralization is bad, and most people here probably like already know that. But like seeing the early days of Google Photos probably show what can happen. Like everyone was very excited about it. It's a free app. It was supposed to stay free for forever, and users started using it. But 3 years ago, they said we no longer have a free tier. Everyone has to pay, and now like most Android users are paying. So this is what can happen with these central providers, and that's why we started this app that you see on the screen, FX Photos, because we wanted to have an open source alternative to that popular application. And where can we host the data of like these photos, these video files? If we go and store it on central providers, we're going to end up with the same problem. We have to either charge users or like show ads to them. So we started FunctionLand as a decentralized back end to basically to use the storage of people. So everyone can provide storage for this application. It can be free for you if you are providing the storage. If you are not, then you have to get like pay in tokens, but still it's cheaper and you fully own your data. So like basically that's how it started and where we are at right now.
So let me get this straight. I'm paying for Google Photos.
So
Bam.
if you are so Google gives you a few gigabytes of storage for free, but since 3 years ago they are counting everything that you upload, your photos and everything that you upload through that free tier. So soon you'll end up using it because it's across Google. So one like Google Drive is using it, Google Photos is using the same space, and Gmail is using the same space. So when you hit that limit, you won't be receiving any emails because your Gmail is also full. So in a few years, you will be paying if you are not right now.
I think they have a name for that.
Rockwool?
Yeah, bullshit. That's a bunch of bullshit. I didn't know that. Okay, I'm gonna go to Google, and
It's
gonna
actually quite funny.
talk with them.
It's quite funny because now that Ehran's mentioning it, I'm like, I was just checking my phone and I'm actually paying for that service.
Oh, you are.
Because at some point I got this notification that says, oh, your storage is like full, you have to pay if you wanna, like, and you like over exceeded the limit by like so much. And I'm like, do I pay like whatever, $5 or whatever it was, or do I just have to go and delete everything or move things? So I'm actually paying for it.
Yeah,
And after the
it's
call,
interesting.
I will make sure that I will move stuff around so I can stop paying
It's an
for that
interesting
service.
business model. I mean, it's kind of sleazy because what they do is they break it up into very small pieces, right? And they make it sound like, oh well, you want to pay well, for us it's yen in Japan, so like, oh, you want to pay an extra 100 yen for an extra gigabyte or something. It's like, I'm like, okay, I don't care about 100 yen. It's like less than $1. Okay, but then they're like, hey, by the way, so you're out of space again, so you want to go to the $5 a month? Yeah, okay, sure. Then you want to go to it's like, what the hell is going on? What is this, Google? What's the deal, Google?
And
Like,
they
I
like
got a
the
wife that
price.
does that. I don't need Google to do that to me. Okay,
It's more or less the traditional model where they try to capture users, capture data, get people to integrate into their platform, and then they charge rent, right?
well,
And
I mean, but the thing is, like, they do it in tiny bits, so it seems like it's not. It's actually very interesting because in my head, I automatically drew parallels to how trade financing works. I know it's like but that's in my head because I think about trade financing because old cool cats think about trade financing, right? anyway, in trade financing is kind of like that because somebody from a developing economy like Sri Lanka, you tell somebody like in the West, like these guys are paying 30% per annum or 35 or 40% per annum. Like, oh my God, it's so much money. But for them, it's in bits, right? So it's like a month-long loan. I mean, they're not paying. It's throughout the year they pay that much, right? So it basically compounds. But it's just little bits. Like, well, it's okay. It's just like, okay, that's the price of doing business. That's the price of doing business. And that's the price of doing business. But in the end, it's like 30%, 40% interest. It's a big price of doing business. So, yeah, I mean, and this is actually why I'm so keen and we're so keen on decentralized trade financing because just general market discovery is a lot more, I would say, fair. Well, fair as in like a fair launch type of fair, right? Not as in we're going to decide what's fair and what's not, but in a fair launch type of fair, right? So you give more opportunity out, put up more opportunity out there. They create all these different things that they can do, and then they take advantage of them, right? So, and that's basically what decentralization does, right? One of the things that it does is it creates this opportunity for a much more balanced ecosystem build. That's number one. Number two, it actually creates or reduces the need for bulky infrastructure, right? And that's also something that's a huge sale point for decentralization is that if you're working with decentralized network, if you're working with a public ledger, right? If you're working, say, with like the Ergo blockchain, right? You don't have to run all your servers in one giant room and pay for all the stuff. You got an incentive structure for the network to exist in a decentralized way. And that's actually something that Joe is really well. Joe, there you go. It's in reverse in me because Joe is over here actually, but he's like stage right for me. Yeah. Is over there, but it's actually over there for me. But anyway, Joe is actually a big. You're a big decentralization guy, and that's actually that was the thinking behind the security and just the finances, the ecosystem behind Rosen, which is what Joe has been a part of, aside from obviously his work with the Ergo Foundation. So, and you always have a lot of really good insights about that. I mean, what is your, what do you think is in your mind, right? Aside from the first principle stuff, right? Which is, all of us are, are all aligned on here, but I'm talking about more, how do you pitch it to the mainstream? Take a shot to the mainstream. Sure. How do you pitch decentralization to the mainstream? How do you pitch something like the Rosen Bridge infrastructure to the mainstream audience to make them care and say, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well, I think that we have to go back to this idea of global machines, right? Which is essentially what decentralized networks are. You have this global machine that runs either a ledger, or in like the case of FunctionLand, a storage network, or in the case of Rosen, basically an auditing and transfer network, that are distributed, that people have the ability to actually access, interact with, and be a part of the machine rather than controlled by the machine, right? And crypto, in a way, has, I don't know, on a funny trajectory where we've really gotten away from this idea of machine coordination, right? Now it's more like speculative social coordination versus actual, I don't know, hardware coordination, function, and incentive. um, so I look at something like FunctionLand, and it's like, okay, it's end-to-end open source. I can definitely understand like why the machine exists, what it does, what it offers, how that benefits people potentially. And then, so in my head, like the framework for that really makes sense, because I look at it as a like coordinated machine across the planet. Then we get into some sides of crypto where I really don't understand what the machine is, other than just social speculation and gambling, right? Which is fine. People want to do that. Good luck, trade well, manage your risks. Hopefully, you don't, over leverage yourself and get wrecked, right? But, from the machine perspective, there are certain, principles that it's like, okay, if you have this machine coordination and you have the ability to actually be a part of that, you're, in a way, strength in numbers comes into play, right? If we go back to like the first cryptocurrency we saw, Bitcoin, one of the reasons why it's been so survivable is because of the network distribution and coordination that hardens it. So I would hope that, over time, people can see the benefit of not only having like clear trust assumptions, but also having that kind of strength in numbers idea, which, if we get into the Rosen, or we get into FunctionLand, and you even kind of get into Bitcoin, a lot of that is built on redundancy, where, you have a redundant machine across the planet that then becomes hard to kill, because you have this scenario where if one aspect of the machine goes offline, it's still working, versus, if you have a central server and, power goes out, internet goes down, I don't know, life happens, you got a problem, right? Amazon web server goes offline and everybody's off for the day. I think everybody that's worked in tech has had that. Nobody can log in, and so we're done. Like, everybody go home. So
That's
having,
actually so Joe, I think is actually very important to really explain to, because we might not have purely technical folk in the audience here,
Mhm.
about redundancy, because for me, for some, me saying mainstream a lot is redundant, so that might not be the best redundancy, but in IT and infrastructure, redundancy is actually good, and data systems redundancy is good. So give the audience a bit of a, just like a quick
Sure.
spiel
Why don't
on
we
what
pass this
redundancy
to
is.
Why don't we pass this to FunctionLand? Let's talk about redundancy in terms of data storage. I think that's a great segue.
Yeah, yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Land,
It
Mr. FunctionLand, please.
probably like it clarifies redundancy and it's an important thing when we store data, because for example, if I store data on one device, and by the way, these are our devices, so if I store your data, for example, on this device, and I just unplugged it, so now if this is just one device, you lost your access to your data. So what we do is we keep 6 replications of your data on 6 different devices. So now, if 3 of those devices go offline, there are 3 other devices that can provide your data to you, and the network just can copy it from another device, put it on like other devices to always make sure that there are 6 replications available. And this ensures the availability of your data. That's the same concept that central cloud providers use, but they replicate it on their own servers. But now, like that's the percentage that you see. Like when they say it's 99.999% uptime on a server, it means they have replicated it 4 times. So we are using the same concept in a decentralized way to make sure that you have that uptime that you receive from the cloud services.
Yeah, and you don't want to be caught in that 0.00001 time when it's off. Just saying. You know, you don't want to be that guy. Yeah, so it is very important to really understand that, you know, when we're talking about distributed systems, that again, one of the things that makes distributed systems so resilient is, I mean, truly redundant, truly distributed systems is redundancies, data redundancy, because there isn't one single point of failure, right? And that is a big thing, and that's actually, you know, just kind of going back a little bit into the Web3, although we try to kind of stay out of that on this particular program. One of the reasons why you know, some of us are just not really into centralized blockchains is because of that. It's not about oh, we don't like them, you know, they're assholes. No, it's about risk. It's all about risk, right? So as a business person, I will not. There's a higher risk for me to lose business using a centralized system than a decentralized system, because I don't have the same level of redundancy going through a centralized system. You can't. And that's where you know, that I think that is actually a huge selling point to mainstream audiences and to to the masses, right? That even if, like, you know, one place, look, tomorrow the US is like just vanishes, right? Ergo is still going to be up because there are miners in many different countries, right? So they're not just in one place. And I mean, that's a very potent sales point to me, I believe. So let's talk about, so moving on, right? So moving from just kind of like the basis of why redundancy and why distributed infrastructure is important in general, right? Let's move to security, right? And so why don't we start with you, Joe, and then we'll move to the land of function, Mr. FunctionLand. Just to kind of like bounce it around for us, right? Give us some thoughts about how and why, right? Because we talk about this in blockchain, like, oh, security, so much. We got so much security, so much.
Well, you always
why is it so much secure? So much more secure. I mean,
you always have, let's say, a set of assumptions that you need to exist within, right? The nice thing about open source technologies is they're clear. You know, most of the time, if you basically are operating within a black box, users have no idea, right? Like, in terms of like what the back end of the system is, what the user agreement to operate within the system is, like what are you sacrificing, what are the attack vectors, you know, who has access to Theodore's Google Drive photos, and what are they doing with it? We have, you know, we have no
what
idea.
What are they doing with them, Theo?
So
That's a great question, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, these are realistic things that people don't really consider. Like who has access, who can play with that? You know, are we going to get some, you know, machine learning model Theodore that comes out and suddenly, you know, we have an AI generated Theodore that replaces you, right? Who knows? So there's a lot of open questions that come about when you have closed systems, right? And most of the time, you have to understand that the traditional model, you know, we were talking about Gmail, Google, the traditional model tends to give convenience first, and then the noose slowly tightens, right? So it's like if you want to get people into a control system, you give them the incentive first, and then slowly you crank up control. And at that point, you know, it's become an adopted way of life, and people are not very resistant because they're used to the convenience of it. And that's usually the biggest friction that, you know, we have in terms of getting people to adopt alternatives, right? And I do think that, you know, FunctionLand specifically has done pretty well in terms of integrating into major platforms, major stores on mobile, making that switch as painless and frictionless as possible. That type of user experience probably is something that Rosen could definitely learn from, and I think that everybody, in kind of the Web3 space, can learn from, because that convenience aspect is powerful. That's why people, accept systems that really do not serve their best interest, don't protect their data, don't really take care of them as a
Cheap
user,
and
and
fast. Cheap
yeah,
and
yeah,
fast.
it's convenient.
Convenience, especially in blockchain right now, is cheap and fast.
And
Right? It's
so,
cheap, it's fast. We don't care about anything else because it's cheap, it's fast, so we can do blockchain stuff, and they get 10x's on monkey pictures.
most people will trade security for convenience. But I do think that there are certain points where people realize why security is important, right? And Theodore will figure that out once his photos come out, and we see what's actually in his drive, and like that type. Nobody cares until data leaks, right?
This example hurts a lot, and now, like, I know,
Yeah.
like, for real, like, because, like, it's so, like, I can relate to it, obviously, using my name all this time. I would love to know, like, get Ehsan's views on, like, how can I save myself, right? What can I do right now using FunctionLand to get out of my misery, and this thread that I have in my head that everything will be leaked right now.
Good question. And actually, Joe raised a good point about being open source, because like why Google Tech is something that we are trusting in. It's because of their developers, right? We trust that they have developers, good developers that are creating this technology, and open source is giving us thousands of those developers that are working on a project. They are constantly like finding bugs, working on it together. So that collaboration makes it more powerful than a central authority with 100 or even thousands of those developers, right? So that's one part. But the other thing is, like when we are talking about a central storage provider like Google, for example, or any central provider, basically, for managing those servers, like those data, there is passwords that their admins have, like their admins have access to the database, although it's encrypted in their database, but they have access to it. And I was reading a news actually a few weeks ago that it was, I think, Google or AWS, one of them, they deleted by mistake $1 billion data of $1 billion asset manager. So, like this can
Whoops.
happen. Yeah. And actually, if you were following news during when Trump was the president, someone on their last day of work at Twitter, they just banned Trump on their last day and left Twitter. So it was, like these things happen on central providers because someone has access to that platform to block you, to delete your data. So security is not just about data leakage. It's also about no one else has access to delete your data or ban you, and that's what FunctionLand network, for example, or any decentralized provider in any other area can provide.
And
It's you who have access.
that's actually something that I think scares some people, right? Because they're so used to this hand holding, especially with data, right? They're used to this hand holding that they say, well, wait a second, I don't want to own my own data. What do you mean I own my own data? I might as well just, like, I trust Google. Google is okay. I trust Amazon. They're big. They're Amazon, right? They don't just sell books anymore. They got spaceships and shit. And I mean, in the end, it comes back to real ownership, right? Real ownership. Like, for example, right? Why is cash king? Right? Why is cash king? Even though it's just a note, you hold it, right? So you hold on to cash. And that can be, and even beyond cash, like something like gold, for example. Why are people so obsessed with gold? Because after all the computers fail, after the world ends, and you're out there in the Fallout wasteland, roaming with your, friend the mutant and all this other stuff, you can still commerce using gold, because it is a naturally scarce commodity that can be used for, just to prove ownership, right? You have it, right? So you have it now. Now Theo has it. Now Joe has it. Now Don has it. It's just that's how it works. And really, it goes the same with why is the two parts of crypto that are kind of also scary to people. One part is, okay, crypto, you really own it, right? You really own. That's the whole point of a decentralized, non-clawback enabled crypto system or crypto ecosystem, is that you actually do like you're holding that crypto, right? So it's nobody's but yours. You have full ownership of the crypto. But on the other hand, you're fully responsible for that crypto. So if something happens to it, you can't call customer service, because like, hey, wait a second. So I have can I call Bitcoin customer service? No, you can't. And I think that's what really scares people, the mainstream, right? That's what scares them, is saying that, well, I own it and it's kind of better, I guess, because you can play on this, like, well, you don't want anybody looking over your shoulder in your purse, or in your stash of weird photos where you're wearing dresses and dancing in Canadian bars. And sorry, Theo, did I say that? Yes, that didn't happen at all.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for throwing me under the bus like this.
That's not what happened at all. It did not. That's not what happened at all. So, how do we? And Ehsan, I wanted to go to you on this, right? Because you have this really very commercially oriented structure, right? The business structure. Not to say that Joe doesn't, but I'm just saying yours is a lot more kind of like customer B2C, right? You got all that stuff. How do you kind of pass that, right? How do you get the customer to say, okay, I'll take responsibility for my own data. I'll take it because it's better. How do you sell it to them as being better?
Yeah. So before going to the scary part, let me just give another benefit to why we should own our data or anything. Like right now, for example, if you're using Google Photos and you're unhappy with it and you want to switch to another alternative, right? You really can't do it that simple, because data is coupled with the service. So when I upload something on Google, it's like my data is on Google platform, and taking the data out is not that easy. Now, when we come to decentralization, even like, for example, your crypto, right? If I have it on MetaMask and I want to transfer it to Trust Wallet, for example, I can. I don't need to transfer anything. It's just a simple key that I get from here, put it there, and I have now all my assets in another platform, right? It's the same in data. So if you're unhappy with like FX Photos, for example, and you want to switch to another platform, to another Photos app, you can simply doing it by transferring your access key. You don't need to transfer your data, which is not the case in central providers. Now, many people might say, okay, I don't want to own that key because, as you said, if I lose it, then I lose access to my data. So then you have to do this trade-off, and it's your choice. It's no one else like Google or Apple. They don't make that choice for you. It's your own choice if you want to do that trade-off. If you want to do that trade-off, for example, on FunctionLand, you have the option to basically create that key that you own for your data, either from your wallet, like from your MetaMask, or from a central provider from your Google login. So if you create it from your Google login, then if you lose your your key, you can again recreate it from your Google your Google account, right? So that's something that you can delegate to Google, like creating that key. But still, the data is yours. So it's just the access to that data that you are delegating to another provider. But I think make being able to do that choice is a beauty of decentralization. Like you can do the trade-off yourself. I want to totally own the key, everything myself, or I want to delegate part of it to another provider, let's say. And that's also in crypto, like in like if you're holding crypto, we are having ledgers for crypto, right? So like you can either have a hard wallet, just if you lose it, you lose everything, or get a ledger, or like use one of the central exchanges. So this is the level of choice that you get on the data side as well.
Yeah, and it's important to recognize that management risk does not disappear when it's outsourced, right? As Ehsan was saying earlier, in terms of cloud provider accidentally deleting $1 billion worth of data, you still have management risk, right? The question is, what are the management risk assumptions that you want to inherit? And that's ultimately a hard question. Not only with I don't know, you could even take the example of gold, right? You got this idea of, okay, maybe you don't want to carry it on you, so you bury it. Hopefully nobody else finds it, and you remember where you buried it. The same thing is more or less true when it comes to key management. And when you outsource that to some provider, you're just extending that risk and trust to them that they're going to, you know, uh, I guess, manage that effectively and efficiently. And one nice thing, going back to open protocols, is you have the ability to understand how the machine functions, right? Can understand the order of operations. You can understand like the risk assumptions that you're inheriting versus, oftentimes when it comes to outsourcing that management risk, there's no clear assumption. Like, what is actually happening here? You generally won't find that, right? And then you're inheriting unknown risks, which generally is not a wise choice.
And nice another way to put this, like our folks on the EVM side of things like to sometimes call it, is like you actually know how the sausage is made. um, and this is quite important for a lot of people. And as we see the years go by, we see a bigger need for this. People do want to know how the sausage is made, because yeah, probably 3 to 5 years ago nobody really cared, but
Mhm.
now people have information. There's a lot of knowledge going around, and people are not just blindly just going and using services or buying products when they don't know how they're made. So this is a great example, in what you guys were talking about. What I would really like to also ask you, and see maybe how you both came together and formed this relationship between Rosen and FunctionLand. I know that you also have a catalyst proposal that you've put in. So, do you want to touch base on that a little bit? Because I would really like for our audience to know what you guys are working on, and what we should be expecting to see from you later down the road.
Sure, I'll start with that. One of the things that Rosen has the ability to do potentially is open up market access for crypto projects, right? And going back to what I had stated earlier, crypto makes the most sense to me when it's about machine coordination, right? Where you have, essentially distributed hardware, you have service or a kind of purpose or function to the machine, and you're using tokens for network coordination, right? There's that's becoming less and less popular, and like the mainstream crypto focus is it's not so much about like machine coordination, trust assumptions, what does this service do, why is it better. It's more about just raw speculation, right? Social energy and coordination versus machine coordination. Um, so I really respect what FunctionLand is doing, and I think that those type of projects, unfortunately, are often buried behind whatever glittery social stuff, kind of the mass consciousness focuses on in the crypto space, which doesn't necessarily deliver value, right? As a service in terms of like leveraging the benefits of decentralized coordination. Like I understand the benefits of gambling and winning, but it doesn't have like broader benefits beyond like that one particular winner. So I do think that as Rosen scales into new environments, it's really interesting for me to look, learn, and explore like what is possible with this type of network coordination, right? Um, Now, Ehsan and MHS, have kind of a back history, and MHS came to me and said, "Hey, you should look into what they're, doing, and there's some potential benefit here to Cardano in terms of, data delivery, NFT storage, offering better assumptions." And I think that most blockchains will need that type of storage layer just because we want things to be light, we want things to be efficient, we want them to be distributed, and you kind of coordinate with the base chain itself. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, I never really thought I would be a Cardano ambassador, but if I go back to like looking at just kind of the open source, the machine, the network coordination, I hope that most of these become interoperable over the long term. That way, better systems win, right? And perhaps even competing systems adopt common standards, and we push the space forward as a whole. I do think that's important. So yeah, I kind of threw that on the catalyst, and I'm hoping that Cardano community is willing to take a look at it and kind of dive into what the benefits are, because it's a pretty neat platform.
And yeah, decentralized coordination that Joe mentioned, actually, that was the key word that strengthened our collaboration with Rosen, because as we want to expand to the token to more ecosystems, it's the decentralized coordination of that. Basically, that expansion is what Rosen can provide to FunctionLand token. And as Joe said, we have like I knew MHS for a long time, and we discussed the idea like on that token 2049. And from there it was let's do this collaboration on both Rosen Bridge and on Cardano, because that can then expand our not just the token reach, but also the features that we are providing, because we rely on the speed of our base chain, and Cardano provides low fees, good speed for our transactions, so that can expand the features and the benefits that we can provide to our node owners. So that's how everything started, and like we decided to have this proposal on Cardano to basically expand our base chain to Cardano.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about Catalyst is that it truly is the world's largest DAO. It's yeah, we try to explain it to others, and I mean, really, especially when we're talking to people like Palmyra and people that are not familiar with the Cardano ecosystem as much. And you try to explain it to them, right? And you say, well, it's a grant, right? But it isn't. It isn't. It's more than that. It is a decentralized investment, and that's what it is. And again, there is your power decentralization, right? So where you guys could might have trouble going to traditional investors and getting funding for what you're doing, you can go to the community and you can and you can show them what you're doing. You can show them that this is a valuable addition to the ecosystem, and actually get funding from Catalyst if the community decides that it is in fact that. So yeah, again, decentralization is always the best way to go. Even if you can't do it huge, full scale, you want to try to do it as much as possible. I think, because it is, again, it's about it's about risk assumptions, right? And it's about how much risk you're willing to take on versus how much business you can do for or lowest risk, highest amount of business. And I think that distributed systems will be able to do that. Now, let's kind of move on to something a bit more kind of fast forward 5, 10, 20 years, right? how do you see, and again, I want to keep the subject of decentralization in the forefront because I know both of you are very passionate about it and you have a lot of insight about it. So fast forward 20 years, right? You got governments working on distributed systems and decentralized systems, which, by the way, distributed systems do not necessarily mean decentralized systems. And that's actually a mistake that a lot of people make. And there's some blockchains out there. It's like, well, we have, 2,000 validators. Oh, yeah, but they're like three guys that run 2,000 nodes. It's like it's a joke. You're out there, right? Decentralization takes hold 20 years from now, same as the internet, right? If we rewind 25 years, the internet was different. Obviously, it was still around, but it was different. So we go through the same thing, right? How does for example, a government agency utilize decentralized infrastructure like this while still keeping a certain level, a needed level of kind of confidentiality, needed level of record protection, privacy protection, and still utilize? I mean, well, first of all, do you think they'll be utilizing a public ledger even 25 years from now when we have perfected these technologies? Or do you think it'll still be something that's a bit more of kind of like, well, it's a specialized blockchain that only runs that particular agency? I don't know, either one, Ehsan or Joe. I mean, just give me some answers. Like, how do you see it working in the future? Do you see it working in the future? Do you see your the DMV or something running on a decentralized public ledger?
I
Possible.
Actually, I was so I can start and then pass to Joe. I was following the government of Canada website, and there are good progress there. So, for example,
What's
they
wrong with
are
you? What's wrong with you, Ehsan?
Sorry. No, nothing. Yeah, you were talking about what were you talking about? You were talking about something. Yeah.
okay. No. Well, so what I want to say is that, like, these governments, they are now seeing the potentials of decentralization, and for example, they are doing tests because, like, as we know, they are not as fast as, like, public, so they are, like, usually behind. But what is happening is they are seeing the benefit. For example, like, they are seeing that it can provide better visibility for the fundings that they provide to different projects. Like, there are, like, all governments, they provide these fundings, and publicly verifiable data can provide more visibility to the public eyes on what is happening to the fundings that are like going out from the government. So these like these supply chain management systems. So people, like, governments are right now exploring the features that decentralization can provide, like blockchains can provide to them in these aspects. And with the rise of AI, and, like, right now we are all of us are using some kind of AI system here and there. We are, like, governments and organizations alike, like central organizations alike, they are seeing the risks of having everything central. For example, right now there is a lot of, like, discussions on, are we now sending all of our data to ChatGPT, and what are they doing with it, right? Like, we don't know what they are doing with it. We don't know what they are planning to do with it, and that scares off governments, central organizations alike. It's banned in some countries, it's banned in some organizations. So now decentralization can play an important role when the AI is now, like, taking power, because now governments, organizations, like anyone basically, can be sure that the data is not being sent to one central entity, and they don't have power over the using of those data. We can basically that's what I think is happening, and why governments are seeing the benefits of decentralization.
What are your thoughts, Joe? I mean, will the local DMV run on decentralized systems, or is that too much to ask?
Oh, I think at this point, at least in my area, a lot of these dinosaurs probably need to retire before network stack updates. That's just honest. Um, but it probably depends on what qualities people want around their data. I'm sure there's a lot of government data that they want air gapped, and they don't want anywhere near the public domain. Then I'm sure there's other data that liveness and kind of the security guarantees is attractive. Auditability definitely has some attractive qualities in terms of budget management, but then again, maybe not, depending on how budgets are actually used and where money goes, right? So maybe there's some people that would be highly opposed to having like auditable systems for governments because they're inefficient, right? It's not as though they manage funds well. You can look in the U.S. and they're like, well, sorry, Pentagon lost a couple $1 trillion. We don't know where it went. Having that auditable probably is not in alignment with whatever their agenda or incentive is. But I do think that with some data, it makes sense. Then you probably have like an availability liveness question, like how quickly can you integrate it into whatever it's going to be used for. But redundant systems in a way are inefficient, right? But the benefit of that inefficiency has its place, right? So like for Ergo, we've always kind of said, okay, well, for the layer one, this financial data probably makes the most sense because it's more or less high value. But then you also have other data, whether it's Oracle data or people will store art, music, all kinds of cultural stuff that also needs a place in a home. And um, it's a solid question. You could even say, okay, well, if people are going to produce data beyond government data, there's probably a place for having it on a distributed network. Maybe there's some data that's probably best kept just locally. It depends what the assumptions are and what services you're trying to provide, right? I think that really the best long-term trajectory with a lot of what we build is clear trust assumptions, because that's something that a lot of traditional stacks just don't compete with. That's not a part of what they want to create or achieve, right? You could ask the question, okay, well, when you had this free forever model with Google data, did they have the plan that, okay, once we onboard X amount of users and we start filling up some hard drive space, then we're slowly going to rope them in? I would say probably. You get users for free and then you slowly say, okay, now we're going to turn up the controls in the system. That's usually how things work. I do think that they're like, from the Ergo perspective, 20 years from now, my goal would be that Ergo remains resilient enough that no jurisdiction can necessarily dominate it, which is that's a tall order, because then you need to say, okay, we need to be survivable. That needs to be our biggest like quality that we focus on. And I think every network more or less has some ideal quality that they try to build around. You can say, okay, well, this particular network is fast, or this particular network is, fill in the blank. I think that survivability, at least in terms of my uh, long-term trajectory, is most important. And that's actually part of, why we built Rosen the way we did, because, you know, actually transferring tokens around usually creates a lot of choke points. And so we were saying, okay, well, how can we use kind of this idea of redundant data and distributed systems to build something that is more survivable?
Yeah. I think, yeah. Theo, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually wanted to like touch base on this a little bit more, and maybe take it to the next and final question that I had, because I'm just thinking about this conversation that we have, and then I think about the proposal that you both are putting in for Project Catalyst, and this new round that's about to start, the voting round. Do you guys want to like give us like spend the last few minutes of it just discussing about it, and just giving us as much information as you can, so we can make sure that our audience, especially in the community, can have a better understanding around it. And I think the most important point that we should be touching on this is what will be the ROI, for the community when this proposal gets voted on, and what are your plans about it?
Yep, thanks for bringing that up. So the proposal in short terms is integration of FunctionLand network with Cardano. What it means is not just a simple blockchain integration, because we have the hardware, we have the protocol side for the file storage, we have the mobile applications like FX Photos, FX Files, and we have the blockchain. So all these integrations should happen. And what it brings for us, it will be faster transaction speeds and better use of our nodes. What can it bring to Cardano network is more transactions, because just imagine right now all of these NFT projects, all of these metaverse projects, which are huge, like we have thousands of those, and most blockchain projects they use AWS for their data storage. Uh, it doesn't matter which service you use, like there are like, because the underlying service for those NFTs are IPFS, and right now major IPFS pinning services they are on nodes on AWS. So it really doesn't matter if they are marketing it as a decentralized platform or a Web3 project, but it's nodes on AWS. So now imagine all those IPFS assets and NFTs, metaverse assets, they are being transferred to FunctionLand network because it's cheaper for them. It is a decentralized backend. And with all these assets, there are transactions that are happening for the storage, for the reward and everything. And we are now doing the roll up for these transactions to Cardano, which means a huge pool of potential transactions coming to Cardano. And not just the NFTs that are on Cardano, but NFTs that are everywhere, like Polygon, Ethereum. So NFTs that exist everywhere, they are using the same base layer for storage. And that base layer becomes FunctionLand, which then bridges to Cardano, which is a huge increase in transactions that happen on Cardano.
And I would assume that with the use of Rosen, this is how it's possible right now. Joe, do you want to add your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Rosen, in terms of working with FunctionLand, is more of a market access function in the future. If you're talking about the data calls that Ehsan's getting into, that's purely FunctionLand and what they're going to build. One of my favorite things about the project is open source hardware specs that you can potentially load software on. I don't know if there's a picture that they have of kind of the ETH node. I think is a great little product where you have the ability to more or less have plug and play, right? I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that enjoy playing around with the Raspberry Pis or their own custom setup, but there's a friction there in terms of convenience, where having that type of hardware that you can load some interesting software onto and potentially participate in kind of the network coordination with ease is really valuable. I think that you were to say, okay, well, if you were to have an FX Cardano server, basically, there would be people out there that are like, hey, this is a lot less painful than setting it up myself, right? And that removes some of the convenience and friction that users get into. The same is true if long term you could get like a Rosen Watcher build or some Ergo infrastructure. Like, we have to remember that decentralized systems are based on hardware coordination. The truth is the space has moved very far away from that in terms of the thinking, like much more into the social layer. Like I'm an old proof of worker, right? You didn't need to talk to anybody, right? You just needed to run your miner and it would connect with everybody, and you had that layer of the network as the main focus. And that shifted to where now a lot of the crypto network is Telegram, Twitter, social channels versus the hardware side, and that's less resilient, in my opinion. We need to go back and look at these as distributed machines. And so you're either part of the machine that the machine offers you a certain clarity in terms of like your level of trust and risk factors, or you have the potential to be controlled by the machine, right? And most users in Web 2, they are potentially controlled by the machine rather than they are the machine. So I think that as a whole, crypto would benefit if we were to shift back towards that mindset. And so seeing, open source hardware builds, I'm about it. I love that.
You're muted, Dan. You're muted.
What I was saying was, no, seriously though, no machine can control me because I rage against the machine. But I'm pumped. Anyway, guys, listen, I think we can sit here and talk about decentralization for forever because it's a very, very, it's a topic that we all hold close to our hearts, proverbially speaking. However, it's about that time to wrap up this week's episode of The Mainstream. Take a shot. Don't forget. And yeah, so guys, thanks a lot for coming onto the podcast. Once again, check out the Catalyst proposal that this team is going to put in. Very interesting stuff. I believe FunctionLand can definitely bring quite a bit of traffic to Cardano. It's a product. It's a working product. It's a working ecosystem. It's something that people need and something that people are already buying. So, it just only makes sense to me. Yeah, once again, guys, thanks a lot for coming on board or coming on the show, on board to come on the show, or on the board of the ship that was the show that is now sailing away. Yeah, that's the ticket. All right, well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And as you know, next week, same time, same place, same channel. And until then, this is yes, Theo.
I just want to say, but finish off, please. Finish off.
Yeah, but if I finish off, it's going to be the end. So you got to say
okay. Few more lines. We're gonna have the Catalyst proposal link down in the description of the video because we want to make sure that everybody can go there, put their votes in, check the proposal, and leave their comments as well. And Ehsan and Joe, it was a pleasure having you guys on our show. Thank you so much.
Same here. Thanks for having us.
Have a good one.
All right, everybody. This is Dan coming to barely alive from Japan because it's past midnight. Signing off.